Do you guys remember Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota state rep that had her life taken from her by Tim Walz's aide after voting to take away health care from illegal immigrants?
Welcome to the Dollemore Daily. I am Jesse Dollemore. Thank you for joining me. If this is your first time or one of your first times here, let me pose a question to you. If you find yourself to be the president of the United States of America, who's been credibly accused of being a child, what do you do if you want to distract people from those accusations? What do you do when your name has been mentioned thousands of times in documents related to your best friend of nearly 15 years, who is a convicted abuser of children, a pedophile, of children? What do you do? Well, one, I guess you can invade a country when you're president of the United States, after all. You could invade and threaten to invade several other countries. We're going to get to all that. But another thing you can do is take to your personally owned social media platform and spread vile, disgusting conspiracy theories, lies about a political opponent, in this case, Tim Walz. Donald Trump is such a disgraceful, unfit individual to be president of the United States or fucking dog catcher in some local municipality that he did just that in an effort to distract from the credible accusations that he is faced with. Unfit to serve, unfit to be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of these United States. Donald Trump took to True Social and posted this little video that I'm getting ready to share you. This lie-fueled video accusing Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, of murdering his friend, Melissa Hortman, who died at the hands of a MAGA psychopath, allegedly, Vance Belter. And Donald Trump saw fit to share this. This is the president of the United States of America going full Alex Jones, causing people nuts in his frothing at the mouth band of misfits and deplorables to run away with this conspiracy and also put the lives of Melissa Hortman's surviving relatives in danger and Tim Walz and his family. Watch this and we'll talk about it and break down the nightmare scenario that this is on the other side.
Do you guys remember Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota state rep that had her life taken from her by Tim Walz's aide after voting to take away health care from illegal immigrants?
She was unalived in her home by Vance Belter, who was later caught after a manhunt. He then sent a letter to the FBI and Kash Patel saying that it was Tim Walz who forced him to do it. Both Vance Belter and his wife worked for Tim Walz for years in different states. Was Melissa Hortman unalived because she voted against a multi-billion-dollar money laundering fraud? The fraud that she voted against that heavily implicated illegal aliens, specifically Somalians, who have been racketing this kind of child care, health care rackets and cooperating with our corrupt government. And today it's breaking news that the money laundering scam in Minnesota of billions of dollars for healthcare offices, child daycares, Medicaid, and various forms of care agencies. These money laundering frauds have been exposed, and it all comes back to Tim Walz.
I did what leaders do. I stepped up and I got the job done for the people of Minnesota.
Very shortly after this, she was unalived in her home by Vance Belter. Vance Belter and his wife worked for Tim Walz for years in different states.
First of all of that is just lies. This is conspiracy, Alex Jones style stuff. And the reason we know that is because if Tim Walz, after all, Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America. He is the leader of the Justice Department. He put in place the Attorney General and the director of the FBI. If there were credible accusations that Tim Walz, if Donald Trump truly believed this to be a possibility, why has there not been an arrest of Tim Walz? If Tim Walz saw to this, he should be investigated and indicted and arrested and prosecuted and sentenced to prison for the rest of his natural days. And the fact that that is not taking place should lead you to know everything you need to know about what this was. A distraction. This is rhetorical bomb throwing on the part of Donald Trump. And it endangers lives. This is the harassment of survivors of an assassination of a Democrat. That's what this is. It is the exact, there is nothing different between what this is and what Alex Jones did to the families of Sandy Hook. And it's coming from the President of the United States. Look, even if somebody was to say, well, this is just to own the libs. This is just a little tee-hee making fun of things. Not his job. We deserve better as a country. I challenge any MAGA puke in my audience who hate watches my videos and sends me dozens of voicemails per day, psychos, losers, obsessed weirdos, challenge, justify this. Put your spin on it. If you're loyal to the president, this must mean Tim Walz is guilty of this thing. Should you not be calling for the prosecution, for the investigation, for a raid of Tim Walz's residence to get to the bottom of this heinous crime? This plotting, this conspiracy to assassinate his good friend, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, and their dog. This is where we are in America. Our president has allegedly committed such heinous crimes that he needs to resort to this type of behavior that is not only unbefitting, it doesn't live up to the expectations of a seated United States president. This doesn't live up to the expectations that you would have for anyone other than a cognitively declined, demented lunatic, someone who sits on an apple box on a street corner yelling about Jesus and the end of the world. And we have seen fit to bestow, to imbue immense power on this particular individual, Donald Trump. He can deploy troops to kidnap leaders of foreign countries, to threaten other countries, allies that he wants to take them over. All because we are a failing state. We are not a nation in decline. We are in the last days. And unless we have Democrats in office who are willing to stand up, to step up and do something to stop him, we will be a failed nation. I'm sure I missed a whole bunch, and you can fill in the blanks for me. We can do it in the comments. We can talk about it there.
Who is in charge? Are you running Venezuela right now?
Yeah, I mean, I keep people, fixating on that. Here's the bottom line on it is we expect to see changes in Venezuela.
What a wild, wild weekend it has been. Look, I talk a lot about many things can be true at the same time, and we need to deal with complex issues and headlines with a complex set of criteria for understanding them. And this one in particular definitely needs that, because Nicolas Maduro, the deposed, the kidnapped president, he was an illegitimate leader of Venezuela. He is a terrible guy. A bad person, a despot, a dictator, a cruel maniac, removing the option of freedom or even living healthy in his country as he lives a lavish lifestyle and his people starve. None of that is in question. You're not going to hear me singing the praises of this dipshit, Nicolas Maduro, or the power structure around him that has allowed him to follow Hugo Chavez and ruin this country and oppress the people who live there. You're not going to hear me saying that. But, not really but, and We are a constitutional republic with rules. We live in a political order that sets aside political power to three separate, co-equal branches of government. Donald Trump knows, the people surrounding him know that the Constitution sets aside the power to declare war to the Congress. He does not possess it. But because he believes himself to be a king, he believes all of us to be his subjects, he does what he wants. He attacked a foreign country, sent in our military, endangered our military to kidnap Nicolas Maduro and his wife and bring them back to the United States. And there's all kinds of excuses being made. And we'll be following this for the next several weeks or months, maybe years, after they've promised us no more forever wars, no more regime change. And here we are. Luckily for us, Donald Trump has surrounded himself with morons, people who don't do crime good. They're good at doing crimes, they're just not good at doing them good. And Marco Rubio was on the Meet the Press and a couple other shows yesterday, but Meet the Press was really he was the chef's kiss of just idiocy, of him just telling on the dear leader. He's blowing Trump's cover, as it were. Because all kinds of questions are being asked about the motivations and what the predicates were for this attack, what the justifications were legally, ethically, morally, constitutionally. And Marco Rubio is just shitting the bed, one question after the next, not backing the play and the narrative that the administration wants to hear, trying to make it up on his own on the fly, because he knows, of all people, Marco Rubio knows just how bereft of justification or legality this was. We know he knows because in past years when he was a Trump critic, he said so. He dedicated his life as a public servant, some of this is tongue-in-cheek, to the prospect of soft diplomacy, soft power for our nation. And here he is now, the simp that he is, the ass lick for Donald Trump that he is, the bootlicking sycophant that he is, on Meet the Press to make excuses. Let's start with this, because after all, what Donald Trump said, he is the tip of the spear, he is the policymaker, he is the dear leader. Donald Trump said, we are now running Venezuela. These people behind me, right here, Marco Rubio being one of them, Pete Hegseth being one, Raisin Cain, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, being another, they're running Venezuela now. And so, Chris Welker here asking the question, so are you running Venezuela? That's the question. I want you to attune your ear to hear him not answer.
Mr. Secretary, who is in charge? Are you running Venezuela right now?
Yeah, I mean, I keep people, fixating on that. Here's the bottom line on it is we expect to see changes in Venezuela. Changes of all kinds, long-term, short-term. We'd love to see all kinds of changes. But the most immediate changes are the ones that are in the national interest of the United States. That's why we're involved here, because of how it applies and has a direct impact on the United States. Okay, we are not going to be able to allow in our hemisphere a country that becomes a crossroads for the activities of all of our adversaries around the world. We just can't allow it. We can't have a country where the people in charge of its military and in charge of its police department are openly cooperating with drug trafficking organizations. We're not going to allow that. These things are direct threats to the United States. And we intend to use every element of leverage that we have to ensure that that changes.
The reason people are fixating on the issue, Marco Rubio, as you well know, is because it's an important one. Under what authority do you have to run a supposedly democratic nation? Now, Nicolas Maduro acted like a Donald Trump, but he was successful in taking power after having lost an election. You would think Donald Trump would admire the effort of Nicolas Maduro, because he succeeded where Donald Trump failed in overturning a free and fair election, in maintaining power even though he lost. Not a good look, Marco. Not a good look. And we know that this is all a sham because when she asked this very next setup here, she asked him about elections. So when are we going to see elections to have a democratically elected leader of this country? After all, that's one of the reasons, that's one of the justifications that you invaded, is that he's not supposed to be there. He's not democratically elected. You won't believe, you will, maybe you will if you've seen it, but you will not believe the answer from this person who represents democracy and the goal of democratic rule in Venezuela.
You talk about a holistic transition. I think there's a lot of focus on potential elections. How soon will elections be held? Within 30 days, Mr. Secretary?
Elections? Well, look, this is a country that's been governed by this regime now for 14 or 15 years. The elections should have happened a long time ago. The elections did happen. They lost them, and they didn't count the votes, or they refused to count the votes, and everyone knows it. So all of that, I think, is premature at this point. There's a lot of work to be done here. Right now, what we are focused in, let's be realistic here, what we are focused on right now is all of the problems we had with when Maduro was there. We still have those problems in terms of them needing to be addressed. We are going to give people an opportunity to address those challenges and those problems. Until they address it, they will continue to face this oil quarantine. They will continue to face pressure from the United States. We will continue to target drug boats if they try to run towards the United States. We will continue to seize the boats that are sanctioned with court orders. We will continue to do that and potentially other things until the things we need to see addressed are addressed. Because ultimately, above everything else, we care about elections, we care about democracy, we care about all of that. But the number one thing we care about is the safety, security, well-being, and prosperity of the United States. And that's what we're going to focus on first and foremost here. And that's what these policies, these changes we need to see made are about.
Okay, significant there. You say you will continue to seize boats when necessary. I want to ask you about boots on the ground.
How soon will elections be held in Venezuela? 30 days, she says. His response, elections? What? What do you mean elections? He's given up the game. Failing. Maybe he's trying to sabotage the agenda of Donald Trump from within. I mean, that's the only other explanation here, other than the fact that he's just a dipshit who can't think on his feet. That's likely the answer, but it sure is a problematic one. The other question that many people are asking, many MAGA are trying to formulate this lie, formulate this distraction, is that, oh, this is not about oil. This is about drugs. Even though during Donald Trump's hour-long, meandering, sleepy time press conference announcing this entire illegal invasion of a country, he said many times, more than any other reason that he gave, he said it was about the oil, not about the drugs. And Marco Rubio can't even get that right.
Let me ask you about oil. The president says the U.S. is taking over the oil. The question is, I guess, if the purpose of the operation was to capture Maduro and bring him to justice, why does the United States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry?
Well, we don't need to. First of all, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela since 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Well, we don't need to take over the oil. Well, why are you taking over the oil if it's about the drugs? Well, we don't need to do that, but we're going to do it. And we'll see that the proceeds go to the people of Venezuela. Even though Donald Trump has said that the oil companies are going to stand up the infrastructure and the refining processes there, and then they will be paid back for their effort. So at what point, Marco Rubio, are the people of Venezuela going to, after you've extricated them from the rule of their dictator, are they going to see the profits? When are they going to luxuriate in what is their birthright, the oil under their feet that Donald Trump claims is our oil? The oil under the ground of Venezuela apparently is our oil. You're not given the same answers or justifications or reasons that the dear leader is. You're not being a good representative of your president, Marco Rubio. And then let's end with this. I know I don't want to go too long here. Marco Rubio was asked specifically about congressional authorization and at what point going forward, if there has to be other strikes or military deployments or other actions taken by the United States government, especially where it relates to the military, especially, when will you be giving congressional notification or giving approval from them? After all, that's the system we live under. You, after all, took an oath to defend and support the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I guess it doesn't matter that you happen to work for a domestic threat to the Constitution, right, Marco? And that's what gets asked here about congressional authorization, which is really the crux of this entire matter. And spoiler alert, if you're not paying attention, he fucks this one up too.
White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles told Vanity Fair that an attack on Venezuela's mainland would require approval from Congress. Why didn't that happen, and will it happen with any future action the administration plans to take in Venezuela or elsewhere?
This was not an action that required congressional approval. In fact, it couldn't require congressional approval because this was not an invasion. This is not an extended military operation. This is a very precise operation that involved a couple of hours of action. It was a very delicate operation, too. It was one that required all these conditions to be in place at the right time in the right place. You couldn't afford leaks. We couldn't afford anything out there that would have endangered the mission and gotten people killed or killed off the mission and the optionality. We didn't even know if the mission was going to happen. How can you notify something you're not even sure if it can happen? Because in order for it to happen, you needed to have weather conditions in place. He needed to be at the right place at the right time. We needed to have forces prepared to go. There were a lot of factors in place. It was a trigger-based operation. But you can't notify that, number one, because you don't even know what's going to happen, if those conditions will ever align. And number two, you can't risk it being disclosed. But this was not an attack on Venezuela. This was a law enforcement function to capture an indicted drug trafficker. And of course, we needed the Department of War to support it because they do have anti-aircraft missiles that could shoot down those helicopters.
But we
had to take down radars. We had to take down those anti-air elements on the way in and on the way out. And that's what this was limited to.
But will you seek congressional approval for any further action in Venezuela or the region?
Well, we will seek congressional approval for actions that require congressional approval. But otherwise, they will get congressional notification. And this is not an operation that required congressional approval. In fact, this is an operation akin to what virtually every single president for the last 40 years has conducted. The difference is that when it's Donald Trump, all these Democrats go bonkers.
Oh, we'll ask for approval when it's necessary, but after that, we're just going to give congressional notification. Says the guy who was a senator for many, many years, a member of the body that he now believes isn't important. Doesn't rate approval from the one branch of government that is specifically outlined as the branch of government to declare war. And after all, that is what this is. As much as they want to paint this as some kind of a backup of law enforcement, this was just the military helping out the DOJ. Is that right? Everything else you say flies in the face of that, Marco Rubio, as you defend fascism, as you defend the king-like powers that Donald Trump craves, and you legitimize it. Anyway, what do you think? I know you've been following this story this weekend. I'd love your opinions. You can share them in the comments below the video. If it's on Facebook, please make sure you're liking and following the Facebook page, Dollemore Daily. If it's on YouTube, well, make sure you're doing both. Subscribe on YouTube, like and follow the Facebook page. I would appreciate it very much. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com.
I will also restore peace through strength, and I will prevent World War III from happening. We will stop it.
If there's any silver lining, and there are very, very few, if any, but if there is one regarding this entire Venezuela invasion and the kidnapping of a leader of a country, it is the fact that MAGA might just be waking up. They might be just understanding the lay of the land where it relates to Donald Trump's absolute lies, the breaking of his promises, all of the fake trumped up rhetoric that he provided for years and years and years, up to and including in this campaign running for president in this election that he won. They ran on peace. They promised no more wars, no more regime change. And MAGA cannot help but notice the same thing that's happened with the Jeffrey Epstein files that has weakened Donald Trump so much is now happening with this. Because of all the things that Donald Trump promised, there were three that were very important to MAGA. That was prices, inflation. That was the Epstein files being released. We know how that's gone with both of those. I think I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm just now realizing it. And the other is no more war, no more regime change, that Donald Trump is the president of peace. While we find ourselves in a full-scale regime change plot, and Donald Trump is sharing images of him giving thumbs up in the Oval Office under a video titled "President Trump is the President of Peace." While we are doing nation building in Gaza, as Donald Trump justifies and makes excuses for the genocide that has taken place there, that is taking place there, the systematic decision by Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government to starve the people of Gaza to death, to erase their people and their culture from the face of the earth. But Donald Trump's the president of peace. In fact, just on New Year's Eve, he was asked a question by a journalist as he exited the portico or entered the portico at Mar-a-Lago. What's your hope for the new year? You'll never guess what his answer was.
Nicely dressed. Hi, Mr. President. Hi, Mr. President. Do you have a New Year's resolution?
I have.
Let's hear it.
Peace on earth. Peace on earth.
It's a hell of a New Year's resolution, right? For the guy who invades, kidnaps foreign leaders, and threatens others, who gets his soccer peace prize because everybody with any eyes or clear understanding of who he is and what his motivations are knows he doesn't deserve the Nobel Peace Prize, so he gets the soccer. He gets the consolation prize. He gets the participation trophy. Here is Donald Trump on the campaign trail, August of 2024, saying that he will restore peace and prevent World War III. And he goes into this whole nonsense about how Hillary said my tone was going to start wars, but I defeated ISIS, even though ISIS is now being used as a reason for bombing Nigeria. I thought you got rid of them 100%, he actually, I think, says in this clip. Watch this.
I will also restore peace through strength, and I will prevent World War III from happening. We will stop it. You know, when crooked Hillary Clinton was running against me, she said, look at him, listen to him. He will start a war, a world war. We had no wars other than I defeated ISIS in its entirety, 100% of the ISIS caliber. Listen to his rhetoric. Listen to his horrible tone. I said that horrible tone is going to keep people from fighting us, and that's what happened. We had no wars. It's been 81 years since that happened for a president. No wars, other than ending some wars that we're in and defeating ISIS.
And look, It wasn't just Donald Trump. It was a team effort. J.D. Vance out there on the campaign trail. This clip is from also during the campaign in 2024, talking about how who's going to go fight in those wars that Kamala Harris is going to start. It's going to be our young men and women, and we want to protect them. We don't want to send them into foreign countries to die.
And we had a world that was at relative peace and calm. And now we've got a world at war in seemingly every continent. Who's going to fight those wars? I guarantee you, it's not going to be Kamala Harris's family. It's going to be the people right here from Erie, Pennsylvania. So we want peace, right? Peace and stability.
So we want peace, right? Yeah. Yeah, we do, J.D. Vance. And you promised that. And Donald Trump promised that. And where are we now? Where are we now as you extrajudiciously, illegally, against both international law and U.S. law, just murder people on the high seas that you claim with no proof, with no due process, are drug smugglers, which isn't a capital crime? Well, what about that? How about that, J.D. Vance? Here's another one. This is from this year, just a couple of months ago, during the Marine Corps ball, or he was there to celebrate it. It was 2 days before the Marine Corps birthday. Talking to Marines and expressing to them that we're doing things differently now. That when we send you somewhere, there will be a clear mission. There will be a clear exit strategy. You will know what's going on. There will be a clear end in sight. And yet here we are. The mission is unclear. How long people are going to be there. And mark my words, make no mistake, there are Americans on the ground right now. There is military on the ground right now in Venezuela with no end in sight, no clear, no understanding of what the rules of engagement are, no understanding of what the end state will be. J.D. Vance, just a couple of months ago.
One of the mistakes that I think we made over the past 40 years, over my entire life, and let's be honest, it was Democrats and Republicans, this is not even a partisan point, is that we were too willing to send our Marines and our soldiers and everybody else off to war without giving you clear guidance about what you needed to do and clear guidelines for when you would come home. And that is one thing the President of the United States and everybody in the White House, we promise we will never do. When we send you off to fight our nation's battles, we will do it with full confidence. We will give you the knowledge and the tools you need to win, and we will make it clear that your job is to kick the enemy's ass and come back home safely. That is our sacred promise from the President of the United States on down. That's what we owe every single one of you, is a clear mission and a clear promise that when you do that mission, you're going to come home safely. That's the first point that I want to make.
And look, it wouldn't be... I wouldn't be doing my job well if I didn't also include Tulsi Gabbard, the Democrat turned Republican bootlicker, the progressive Democrat turned Trump sycophant, who on Halloween of this past year, October 31st of this past year, gave a speech talking about how Donald Trump was ushering in a new age. And he was going to put an end to the endless cycle of regime change and nation building and forever wars. Those times are over under Donald Trump, says Tulsi Gabbard.
The old Washington way of thinking is something we hope is in the rearview mirror and something that has held us back for too long. For decades, our foreign policy has been trapped in a counterproductive and endless cycle of regime change or nation building. It was a one-size-fits-all approach of toppling regimes, trying to impose our system of governance on others, intervene in conflicts that were barely understood, and walk away with more enemies than allies. The results? Trillions spent, countless lives lost, and in many cases, a creation of greater security threats, the rise of Islamist terrorist groups like ISIS. President Trump was elected by the American people to put an end to this. And from day one, he has showed a very different way to conduct foreign policy.
These people have no dignity, no self-respect, no shame in the things that they say but don't believe, in the things that they say but don't even follow up on. They're just liars. To call them hypocrites just doesn't get it done. There's somebody on Twitter, Caroline Bueno, who put this little ditty together. I'll put this up on screen and you can pause. We'll leave it up on screen for 5 or 10 seconds as I'm talking here. But you can pause the screen and look at all of these times that Tulsi Gabbard has let her true convictions be known on how she feels about regime change, how she feels about Venezuela, specifically Venezuela. And she's been yammering about this, lying about this deeply held political conviction relative to policy since 2019 when she was trying to run for president as a Democrat. Remember this.
The United States needs to keep our hands off Venezuela and let the Venezuelan people determine their own future. And as president, I would continue that policy, both in countries like Venezuela and others, and end these destructive and wasteful regime change wars that have proven so costly on us, the American people, on our troops and service members and their families, and have proven to cause more problems, increase suffering, increase instability for the people in the countries where we wage these wars. In Latin America especially, we only have to look to history to see what happens when the United States comes in and tries to act as the world's police, toppling governments and leaders and dictators that they don't like. It is the people who always end up suffering the most, both in the short term as well as the long term.
Yeah. I mean, it's to say it's a bit much would be a bit much. This is just gross. These people are beholden to nothing but profiting Donald Trump and his pals, because there will be billions upon billions upon billions of dollars made in profit for Donald Trump and his cohort of billionaire ghouls off of this. These are war profiteers, including Tulsi Gabbard, the peacenik, including J.D. Vance, the man who says, we're not going to send you anywhere that we don't tell you what's going on. And including Donald Trump, who puts up images again that he is the president of peace. Right. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below. Let this serve as a reference for you as Donald Trump provides conquest for MAGA, the thing they didn't want or claimed they didn't want. But we'll see. So if you're one of those people out there who's like, well, at least it's just Venezuela. At least we're just liberating the people of Venezuela. At least Donald Trump's going to hold up to his promise about no new wars, about no regime change, about no entanglement with U.S. policy. At least we have that to look forward to, right? Don't be one of those naive people. Don't give Donald Trump benefit of the doubt that he does not earn. He has not earned and he does not deserve. Because there's a slew of countries that are on deck for invasion, that are primed for Donald Trump to distract even more from the headlines about his involvement in the Epstein files. We already know what took place in Venezuela, right? We got Canada, Mexico. By the way, there's going to be receipts here. So let this video serve as a repository. It'll exist forever on the internet, where you can point people to that invariably when we do end up invading Canada or Mexico or Cuba or Greenland or some of these others, Nigeria, Iran, Colombia. When it happens, you will have the justification here. You will have the understanding of that someone out there called it like it was going to happen. But let's start with this. This is Donald Trump just this weekend talking to Fox and Friends, saying that, hey, no one can stop us. If we want to do it, we're going to do it. If we have to do it again, we can do it again too. No one can stop us.
After having done this incredible thing last night of letting somebody else take over, where we have to do it again, we can do it again too. Nobody can stop us. There's nobody that has the capability that we have. You know, when I watched that war in Russia going on and on and on, and everybody dying, and It's like, it's primitive. It's primitive. It's horrible.
Nice little chuckle at the end there from the Fox News host, while giving a little tee-hee about the carnage and the loss of life in Ukraine at the hands of Russians. Fantastic. This is an administration that is not only not taking this seriously, they are making jokes about what they're doing. This is from the White House, the official Twitter account of the White House. No games. Fuck around and find out, they post. With this goofy black and white ominous picture of Donald Trump like he's some kind of a strong man or a badass when he is nothing but a draft dodger, a physical coward and weakling who turned down the opportunity to serve when his nation called. Yet he's our commander-in-chief. He's a brave man who makes brave, bold calls. They'd have you believe. We know what he did in Venezuela. He signaled as much for Canada, our ally, our peaceful, developed nation ally to the north. This, well, I was just going to cut to the clip, but actually, this was in an address in a speech given to the highest ranked individuals in our military. Remember this from a few months ago in September.
And Canada called me a couple of weeks ago. They want to be part of it. To which I said, well, why don't you just join our country? You become 51, become the 51st state, and you get it for free. So I don't know if that made a big impact, but it does make a lot of sense. It actually makes, because they're having a hard time up there in Canada now, because as you know, with tariffs, everyone's coming into our country.
These are by design. I'm doing them in the right order here, by the way, because I'm covering North America. I'm covering our hemisphere, and then we'll move on because he has floated this idea that it's a new doctrine. It's not the Monroe Doctrine. It's the Donroe Doctrine. We'll get to that. But it's not just Venezuela. It's not just Canada. He said as much this weekend about Mexico.
I wonder, Mr. President, though, I want to ask you because from your vice president, J.D. Vance, said that the message is pretty clear. The drug trafficking must stop. So was this operation a message that you're sending to Mexico, to Claudia Sheinbaum, the president there?
Well, it wasn't meant to be, and we're very friendly with her. She's a good woman, but the cartels are running Mexico. She's not running Mexico. The cartels are running Mexico. And we could be politically correct and be nice and say, oh, yes, she is. No, she's very, she's very frightened of the cartels. They're running Mexico. And I've asked her numerous times, would you like us to take out the cartels? No, Mr. President. No, please. So we have to do something because we lost. The real number is 300,000 people, in my opinion. They like to say 100,000. 100,000 is a lot of people, but the real number is 300,000 people. And we lost it to drugs, and they come in through the southern border, mostly the southern border. Plenty come in through Canada, too, by the way, in case you don't know. But they come in through the southern border, and something's going to have to be done with Mexico.
Something is going to have to be done with Mexico, says Donald Trump, who just illegally invaded and kidnapped the leader of a foreign country. They're doing the same shit about Greenland. Stephen Miller's wife tweeted this horrific tweet about Greenland. Soon, she says, with Greenland that's covered in a United States flag. Donald Trump also has been talking quite a bit about Greenland, stressing and insisting that we need Greenland, is how he phrases it. We need Greenland for national security's sake.
Thank you, sir. You've named Governor Landry to be new special envoy to Greenland.
Yeah.
How do you? What do you see that role entailing? And is it still your intention that Greenland become part of the U.S.?
He viewed Louisiana, the Louisiana Purchase. He said, "I'm governor of Louisiana," and he said, "I would love." I didn't call him; he called me. He's very proactive. He's a great guy. He's a deal guy. He's a deal maker type guy. And we need it for national protection. We need Greenland for national protection. They have a very small population. And I don't know, they say Denmark, but Denmark has spent no money. They have no military protection. If they say that Denmark was there 300 years ago or something with a boat, well, we were there with boats too, I'm sure. So we'll have to work it all out. But he felt very strongly we need Greenland for national security, not for minerals. We have so many sites for minerals and oil and everything. We have more oil than any other country in the world. We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need it for national security. We have to have it. And he wanted to lead the charge. So we're making him, Marco, today, a special envoy to Greenland. Greenland's a big deal. Yeah.
So are we keeping track here? We got Venezuela, we got Canada, we got Mexico, we got Greenland. Let's stay within our hemisphere. Here's Colombia. He's been telling the president of Colombia, the democratically elected president of Colombia, that he better watch his ass. And he was asked about this while talking about the invasion, the illegal kidnapping of a foreign leader in Venezuela. And he doubled down and said, yeah, I'm going to go with what my earlier thing was. He does need to watch his ass.
Mr. President, so Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is about that.
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And, yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Are you keeping track? Do we have an idea of what Donald Trump has in mind? He wants to treat this hemisphere like Hitler treated the European theater during World War II. Donald Trump was compared to Hitler by his own vice president. He might be America's Hitler. And here we are as he threatens Canada and Mexico, invades Venezuela. Venezuela never fired a shot. Venezuela didn't drop any bombs. Venezuela was no threat to the United States whatsoever. But the leader, the shitty dictator of Venezuela is now in U.S. custody, which is fine. That's fine. But it's how we do it. Didn't follow the law. Didn't go to Congress for authorization to use military force against another nation. And now there's a pattern emerging. The president of Colombia better watch his ass. Cuba also, just from this weekend, they're also at risk.
Go ahead.
Yeah, is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
I think Cuba will be something we'll have to talk about too. Very similar situation, he says. And his Secretary of State, who is just the token Cuban in the administration, who will be there as the poster boy for, this is a guy whose parents are Cuban immigrants. This needs to happen because Marco Rubio says so. He was asked about this yesterday on the Sunday shows, and this is what he had to say.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First of all,
is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard, but I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro. His entire internal security force, his internal security apparatus is entirely controlled by Cubans. One of the untold stories here is how, in essence, you talk about colonization, because I think you said Dulce Rodriguez mentioned that. The ones who have sort of colonized, at least inside the regime, are Cubans. It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. Right. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans.
All right.
And Marco Rubio backs the play. Yep, they're in a lot of trouble too, he says. Are we keeping count? Venezuela, Canada, Mexico, Greenland, Colombia, Cuba. And if you're thinking, yeah, well, this is the new Dollemore doctrine, that it's just the Western Hemisphere. This, by the way, I'll skip ahead here. This is what he shared. We'll get to what the Monroe Doctrine is. But it's him with a bat protecting the Western Hemisphere, protecting North America and South America. Except for he's also making threats after having bombed Nigeria for their attack on Christians, because it's, only Christian lives matter, unless it's those Christians that he's violently deporting from the United States and vilifying. Yeah, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets, they're eating the cats and dogs. Christians from Venezuela that he acts like are all gang members. The rapists from Mexico that he assumes some are good people. All of these are Christian people. Here he is, put this on True Social as a reminder that you're not safe either, Nigeria.
If the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about, and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible, horrible atrocities. I'm hereby instructing our Department of War to prepare for possible action. If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet, just like the terrorist thugs attack our cherished Christians. These are cherished people. These are great people. Leave them alone. Warning, the Nigerian government better move fast before it's too late. If they don't, there's going to be hell to pay.
And then, of course, we would not have a complete list, and this might not even be a complete list, but we would not have as complete a list as this is if not talking about Iran. Donald Trump dispatched Mike Huckabee over the weekend, and he's now making threats against Iran, I guess, as a proxy spokesperson for Israel, a country he doesn't represent, because after all, he's the American ambassador to Israel. Watch him threaten Iran.
Trying to build weapons to kill people in other parts of the world rather than build a better life for the Iranian people. So let's hope that nobody has to go in militarily and take down Iran. Maybe the people will do it from within. That'd be the best solution of all. And bring them into a sense of civilization. They once were really the most progressive and extraordinarily culturally advanced part of this part of the whole world. And then after the Ayatollahs came in 1979, they screwed the whole place up.
And then again, we'll end with this. Look, I'm going to put these screenshots up. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but this is some kind of a janky, sideways, idiot notion of creating Donald Trump's own Monroe Doctrine style foreign policy blanket. And it is completely bananas to compare yourself to the Monroe Doctrine, which was from the early part of the 1800s, like 1823. John Quincy Adams was James Monroe's vice president. That tells you how far the son of the second president of the United States was the vice president for James Monroe. When the globe was not we didn't have the internet. Obviously we didn't have the internet. We didn't have the global trade infrastructure and the global economy that we have now. And we were protecting ourselves from the influence and the interference of European nations here in the Western Hemisphere, because we wanted the spoils of colonialism and imperialism for ourselves. That's what it was. But Donald Trump wants you to believe that it's the Dollemore Doctrine as he elevates and legitimizes himself while threatening all of the countries that we've listed, not just in the Western Hemisphere, but also in the Middle East, in Africa. And look, this might not even be a complete list, but let this serve as a reference for you. We can tick down the list as Donald Trump provides conquest for MAGA, the thing they didn't want or claimed they didn't want. But we'll see. Anyway, what do you think? What did I miss? What did I miss? What we need in this moment are Democratic leaders who are willing to do the work, who are willing to stop voting for Donald Trump's nominees, stop voting for Donald Trump's legislation, stop advancing the agenda of this illegal usurper of our Constitution. With any illegal act that Donald Trump does, there are myriad justifications for it. They all contradict with one another and they come at different times. It depends on who the interviewer is talking to or what happens to be in the headlines that day. It's always just this ever-evolving, changing, fluid thing relative to what should be concrete answers about why we did what we did. The legal justification, the constitutional justification, the foreign policy justification. None of that we get with Donald Trump because it's all ad hoc, slapdick nonsense from a group of just idiots who have no respect for the Constitution, for the rule of law, for the American people, for tradition. So they're claiming this is all about the drugs. They're claiming this is about fentanyl, you're hearing, even though fentanyl is not mentioned in the indictment of Nicolas Maduro at all. It's about the drugs. It's about the drugs. It's about the drugs. We can't have drug traffickers in our hemisphere. We can't have them killing Americans. That's not what it's about, though. We know that's not what it's about because Donald Trump pardoned a legendary drug trafficker, the former president of Honduras, who was trafficking hundreds of thousands of tons of cocaine. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cocaine, killing, ostensibly, innumerable Americans. And Donald Trump, when asked about this, gave a nonsense answer the other day while he was talking about invading Venezuela, and it's batshit. And then we're going to get to Dan Goldman, Democratic congressman, really putting the nail in the coffin here and explaining exactly what we're doing. But first, here's Donald Trump just tripping over his own tiny dick, trying to make explanations.
You said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted on many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different? And would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You know what he didn't say there? You know, in all of the talk and all of the meandering nonsense and the trying to find a point and just trying to keep himself from falling asleep mid-sentence, what he didn't say is that he was innocent. He was treated very unfairly. Oh, so unfairly. He didn't say he didn't do it. Most certainly did not say that. That's because he was dead to rights. The evidence is out there. You could read through the transcripts of the trial. The guy was guilty. Donald Trump doesn't care about drug trafficking. He doesn't care about saving the lives of people who are addicted to drugs. He doesn't care about any of that. He cares about how he can be paid for pardoning people. And that is what happened. Now, Dan Goldman does a far better job than I could ever dream of doing. He was on MS Now, is the new name of MSNBC, and talking about this very thing. I have two clips of Dan Goldman. One is that this is not about the drugs, and the second one, he explains exactly what it is about.
Because what it reveals is that this pretext about trying to bring Nicolas Maduro to justice for his drug trafficking is total bogus. because the Honduran president was just pardoned, notwithstanding an actual conviction in U.S. court for the same thing. And not to mention that an MS-13 leader who was extradited to the Eastern District of New York, his case was actually just dismissed about 9 months ago so that he could be deported back to El Salvador, and where Donald Trump has a budding bromance with President Bukele. So it can't be that only narco-terrorism in Venezuela is worth battling, but narco-terrorism in Honduras and El Salvador is perfectly fine. And that's why it gives the lie to this explanation.
So if it's not about the drugs, which it clearly is not about the drugs, what is it about? Spoiler alert, it's the oil.
But Donald Trump in his address today revealed what I think is the reason, and it is oil. And it is that Donald Trump promised oil executives that if they gave him $1 billion for his campaign, that he would do right by them. And they gave about $500 million. And this is a massive gift that is in violation of international law and is essentially just co-opting an entire country's natural resources for the benefit of U.S. companies. When we have so many things that we need to deal with here at home, none of this affects grocery prices or health care or wages or prices of rent. None of this has anything to do with helping those issues which are central to the American people. We are now venturing. Donald Trump is taking us into another amorphous, shapeless and unknown, uncharted territory now with taking over another country.
You see, Donald Trump does crime so poorly that he just explains what he's going to do before he does it, and then he does it. And then when all of the court cases invariably going to come around, when all of the cease and desist orders and all of the trying to get to the bottom of this, all we have to do is go back to his previous statements where he, just like Dan Goldman just said, he promised the oil companies, if you help me get elected, you'll be rewarded with untold riches. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. And here we are. He's following through for his billionaire buddies on the campaign promises. He doesn't follow through on his campaign promises to MAGA, to people who can't benefit him. Oh, you voted for me? Pfft, who cares? You don't matter to me. Billionaires who own oil companies matter to me. That's why I'm against solar. That's why I'm against windmills. We need oil. We need coal. Because those people are paying him. Those people are donating money to his ballroom. Gross. What we need in this moment are Democratic leaders who are willing to do the work, who are willing to stop voting for Donald Trump's nominees, stop voting for Donald Trump's legislation, stop advancing the agenda of this illegal usurper of our Constitution. And that includes you, Dan Goldman, very fond of voting for Donald Trump's bullshit. We need Democrats to stand up, to be an opposition party. Quit considering yourself the fucking minority. It's hot in here. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, what do you think? I do. I want your opinion here. Let's talk about this story. We can do it in the comments. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily at Dollemore.com. I love and appreciate you. Thank you for tolerating my bombacity, my bombasticness, whichever is the correct one. I do appreciate you. I know I'm a bit much sometimes. I know I can be a little bit too much, but thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it very much.
He promised he'd end all wars on day one. In 2 weeks, he's bombed Nigeria, Syria, and now Venezuela. He said he'd lower costs on day one, and then he put a tariff tax in place that has raised everyone's costs.
You know, one of the problems with corporate media is that they get to choose, I guess is kind of the problem with all of it. A lot of the corporate media out there right now are really leaning on going to Republicans for comment, and then Democrats get kind of boxed out because there's only finite time during these shows. And this is why we need leaders in the Democratic Party who communicate very well, who can be very destructive and disruptive to the narrative being spun by Republicans and Donald Trump and this administration and the cohort of fascists and fascist enablers in Washington, D.C., the town in which I live. And Eric Swalwell is one of these disruptors. He was on CNN. Not yesterday, I believe it was the day before. And he laid waste to Donald Trump and the narrative surrounding Venezuela, surrounding the fact that we're running the show now. Donald Trump can't even run this fucking country. How does he think he's going to run another country? A massive water. It's water, so much water. You've never seen so much water. That's how much water separates us and Venezuela. The same amount of water that prevented a proper response in Hurricane Maria to Puerto Rico. It's that much water and then some. And Donald Trump thinks he's going to run that country. Get out of here. So I got 3 clips here, and they are one is better than the next, is better than the next. Let's start with this, which is whether or not this entire Venezuelan operation was in the DOJ's purview, which was in Donald Trump's legal area of authority, not like his area of concern, but his actual area of command authority to do what he did. And Eric Swalwell just gives the answer.
We're glad to have you here. It's good to see you. The president and his administration today going to great lengths to talk about how this is a Department of Justice operation, law enforcement that was supported by the Department of Defense, by the military. Legally speaking, do you believe this is within the DOJ's purview?
Absolutely not. Vladimir Putin has an arrest warrant, out for his conduct in Ukraine, and Donald Trump certainly is not going and arresting Vladimir Putin and invading that country and saying that we're going to run it without a plan.
Yeah, if this was about taking out a despot who had an arrest warrant and was indicted, the same could be said for Vladimir Putin. The same can be said for Bibi Netanyahu, who has an arrest warrant out for him for war crimes, for genocide, for crimes against humanity. But he is in Donald Trump's little friend group, just like Vladimir Putin is. So he's not going to go after him. He's going to go after somebody else. Eric Swalwell also highlighting the lies and betrayals of Donald Trump, not just to the American people, but also people involved in all of this. This is why we need to put pressure on outfits like CNN, outfits like MS Now, even. CBS, even though that's fully in the tank now. That's like asking Fox News for something different than they give us. We need to put pressure on corporate media, legacy media, mainstream media to do the right thing, to have the right people on, to give alternate explanations than those provided by this administration.
Of course, Donald Trump was always going to violate the Constitution and invade Venezuela. He's done the exact opposite of what he's promised he'd do since he took office. And that is frankly the biggest betrayal he's made as president. He promised he'd end all wars on day one. In 2 weeks, he's bombed Nigeria, Syria, and now Venezuela. He said he'd lower costs on day one, and then he put a tariff tax in place that has raised everyone's costs. And he said he'd release the Epstein files, and of course, he has buried them. So politicians break promises all the time. That happens, but almost none of them do the exact opposite of what got them elected. And that's what Donald Trump just did with this action in Venezuela.
And speaking of betrayals, speaking of going back on promises, Donald Trump is now betraying the people that he swore he would protect, that he loves. I love the poorly educated he croned after the Nevada primary in 2016. You'll remember that, right?
We won the evangelicals. We won with young. We won with old. We won with highly educated. We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
So it's those very poorly educated people that Donald Trump loves so much that he also betrayed. And Eric Swalwell doesn't let a good appearance on the media go without explaining it explicitly.
Agree with them?
Well, I do. And, I talk to Californians all over the state, and going into Venezuela and, quote, running that country ranks at about 200th on their priorities. They're not focused on Venezuela. They're focused on the cost in Ventura and Vallejo, the rent in Los Angeles, and the grocery prices in Pasadena. And they have no faith that Donald Trump can run a country. He couldn't run a casino. And now he's going to run a country in South America while we watch as he fails to run a country in North America. That doesn't add up. And neither does this whole concept that we're going to get the oil from Venezuela and that it will pay for itself, essentially. We heard that over 20 years ago from George Bush, that we'd get the oil from Iraq, and that cost us $3 trillion.
They wanted this presidency to be different. They wanted this administration to be different. They wanted the policy of the United States of America to be focused on something other than endless wars, regime change, invading other countries. They wanted him to focus on something other than this. And here we are. He promised them he would, and here we are. And again, how does he intend to run a country when he lost money running a casino? Guaranteed money. He had a printer that printed $100 bills in owning a casino, and he went fucking bankrupt. How does he intend to run a country an ocean away? Is Marco Rubio gonna do it? Is Pete fucking Hegseth gonna do it? Come on. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. It was a brave decision by Donald Trump, and then no follow-up. He didn't answer the question. You're not doing the job you should be doing, Tony DeCoppel. Look, I know that I, and also people in my particular cohort here on YouTube and in independent media that talk a lot about independent media and the importance of independent media. And we take a big runny dump on legacy media to get crass about it. We shit on mainstream media a lot. But we have a new situation on our hands with Donald Trump pressuring these cowards who own these giant media companies, who then bend the knee to him, to give him everything he wants. He allows them to merge and make purchases, to get themselves even larger, to take choice out of the equation. And CBS is the next in line. I know I talked about Tony DeCoppel the other day. I've talked about Barry Weiss and CBS and how they have just fully become state media. They are now even making like maybe Fox News blush. It's getting so gross. And it took no time at all after they named Tony DeCoppel as the new anchor of CBS News. Tony DeCoppel, a guy who's never seen a genocide conducted by Israel that he didn't want to get behind. No solutions to homelessness or drug addiction or government funding to make people's lives better. Nah, none of that. Let's punish them all. That's who he is. He's a real piece of work. And he's now the new CBS anchor. Bizarre the situation we find ourselves in now. And I have three clips here. One is Margaret Brennan, who also works for CBS, just to illustrate to you that this isn't just a Tony DeCoppel issue. This is absolutely a CBS, a larger universal issue with CBS, an umbrella problem for this network now that Barry Weiss runs the show. Margaret Brennan hosts Face the Nation, and she did a little stinger, a little commercial to promote an interview that Tony DeCoppel did with Pete Hegseth, and then immediately cuts to commercial, giving no context. And the reason I'm going to play this isn't for the fact that she did it. It's the fact that when they go out of it and they fade to black at the end of the clip, you might need to rewind it and watch it to really get it. She looks demoralized at what she had just done. She looks bummed the out of what she has just reduced herself to, working as a propagandist for a fascist, for America's Hitler, working in service to him. Watch this.
Late yesterday, CBS Evening News anchor Tony DeCoppel talked exclusively with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and asked what the president's comments about the U.S. running Venezuela meant, and asked if the secretary was prepared to have troops on the ground there.
Well, it means we set the terms. President Trump sets the terms, and ultimately he'll decide what the iterations are of that. But it means the drugs stop flowing. It means the oil that was taken from us is returned ultimately, and that criminals are not sent to the United States. It means that foreign countries don't have a lodgment inside our hemisphere. So ultimately, we're going to control what happens next because of this brave decision. President Trump has shown American leadership. And he'll be able to dictate where we go next.
Face the Nation will be back in 1 minute. Stay with us.
Now, this that I'm getting ready to show you was what she was promoting, what she was getting you all amped up and interested to watch, was Tony DeCoppel talking to Pete Hegseth, asking no follow-ups, which we will demonstrate. This is the man who Donald Trump says might be running Venezuela. What did you see in Venezuela during that attack? And then gives him the opportunity to just, the troops, the flag, the freedom, the patriotism, the lethality, given all of his buzzwords with no critical questions whatsoever. Not a critical eye on any of this as far as the global impact, on the legality of it, on the constitutionality of it, of Donald Trump trying to claw powers for himself that are not authorized him by the Constitution of the United States. He gives him the commercial space to say all the nonsense about the troops and patriotism and rock flag eagle and all the bullshit. And then when it comes time to ask a question, he asks an actual question and then flubs, does not ask a follow-up after his question was not answered. And his question was a good one. First, though, here's the jingoistic patriotism nonsense provided by the new state media, CBS News.
Appreciate it. Taking a turn here now. When President Trump was asked exactly who would be running the country of Venezuela temporarily, he referred to the officials standing there behind him at the podium. And one of those officials joins us now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for joining us. I want to begin tonight with the soldiers and sailors involved in this. We're very happy. Thank you again. We are very happy to hear that there was no loss of American life in this mission. And I understand you're just back from Joint Base Andrews, where you met with some of the team members involved in all of this. How are they doing? And you were watching this unfold. What did you see?
I saw the best of America. I saw men and women dedicating their lives to defending our country and to accomplishing that mission. And I just landed here at Joint Base Andrews, had a chance to meet a lot of them firsthand who were involved, walked through the TikTok of what can only be described as the most sophisticated, most complicated, most successful joint special operations raid of all time. I mean, nothing of this size, scope, when you actually unpack what was done kinetically and non-kinetically, that many people, that many moving parts, that consequential, and they got the job done. And despite any obstacles in front of them, it is incredible to be able to serve such courageous, brave, and skilled Americans. We do right by them, and President Trump did. He gave them a clear mission, and they finished it.
He teases the piece by saying when Donald Trump was asked who would be running Venezuela, he referred to those people standing behind him. And right now we have one of those people. You're going to get answers about what they're going to do to run the country. What'd you see during the invasion? Oh, troops, patriotism, blah, 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 blah. I saw the best of America, bravery. Donald Trump's brave for, that's not journalism. If we wanted that, we would just go to Pete Hegseth's Twitter account, Tony DeCoppel. If we wanted that, we would just go to the White House YouTube page to receive the propaganda from the administration. We don't need you for that, Tony DeCoppel. We don't need you. Now, the next clip starts where that one ended. And you'll see, because I'm giving you the full context here. He then asks the question about what does running Venezuela look like? How does that appear to the administration? What do you intend to do? Pete Hegseth, no surprise you will feel, did not answer the question. And the follow-up didn't involve trying to get an actual answer to the question, because Tony DeCoppel isn't there to get answers. He's there to provide the administration an opportunity to propagandize his audience.
President Trump did. He gave them a clear mission, and they finished it.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I'd love to talk about the mission now because there are questions about what happens next in Venezuela. The president said today that the U.S. is going to be running the country. What does that look like? Does that mean we're going to see Americans on the corners of Venezuela, in the government of Venezuela? Are you prepared to have troops on the ground in Venezuela?
Well, it means we set the terms. President Trump sets the terms, and ultimately he'll decide what the iterations are of that. But it means the drugs stop flowing. It means the oil that was taken from us is returned ultimately, and that criminals are not sent to the United States. It means that foreign countries don't have a lodgment inside our hemisphere. So ultimately, we're going to control what happens next because of this brave decision. President Trump has shown American leadership, and he'll be able to dictate where we go next.
So, Mr. Secretary, then, by your words there, I imagine you are prepared for a full-scale U.S. intervention to stabilize the country of Venezuela if asked for by the president. If that comes to pass, will you ask Congress for approval? Do you believe legally you need to ask Congress for approval?
Well, we're postured, and the president said the blockade continues, no oil going in and out, no drug boats allowed to traffic in the Caribbean or the East Pac, so we're still poised there. This was a law enforcement exercise.
It was a brave decision by Donald Trump, and then no follow-up. He didn't answer the question. You're not doing the job you should be doing, Tony DeCoppel. I mean, maybe if this was an interview with a Palestinian, you'd have some fire to ask some actual questions. You'd want to really hammer him down. But because it's Donald Trump, oh, we can't do that. We must paint America in the best light, even though we are acting illegally. CBS News cannot be relied upon for accurate information anymore. They are worse than Fox News. The reason they're worse than Fox News is because they still maintain the patina of respectability. There's an age long gone where Walter Cronkite was a storied newsman behind a desk as the anchor of the CBS Evening News. And they still maintain some of that reputation. There are people in my life who still think CBS is what it once was. It is no longer. And that's why they're more dangerous than Fox News, because people will see, oh, CBS, that's not Fox News. That's not Newsmax. That's not One America News. No. That's not Daily Caller. That's not Daily Wire. No. That's not Epoch Times. No, that's CBS News. They're legitimate. They're respectable. They're believable. We can trust them. And no, you can't. No longer. Or am I wrong? Let me know in the comments below. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. If you appreciate what I do or the way I do it, the way that I handle things, if you appreciate my integrity, whatever, please consider supporting this work in independent media where I'm going to ask tough questions. I'm going to analyze the news with an eye on reality, not providing propaganda for either party, but especially not the Republican Party, this fascist outfit. You can become a channel member on YouTube. Click the join button below the video, or you can just click the join button on my channel generally. You can also, even better, the better option would be go to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. I wouldn't even complain if you canceled your YouTube membership and migrated over to Patreon. That would be great because they take way less. We're grandfathered in. We've been on Patreon since 2014. So we're in like the legacy. They only take 5%, where YouTube takes 30 or 35%. It's a nightmare. Anyway, all the little weird numbers. If you want to support, I would appreciate it very much. It does help go a long way to helping us do the work we do. I love and appreciate you very much. Thank you for your engagement, for your passion, for making the country and by extension, the world a better place. We're going to get through this. It's not going to be easy, but I believe we will. But it will take all of us. Anyway, I will see you next time. Be genuine and take care of one another.